David?
Jack, it's good to see you. I mean, it's like fresh air coming out of a week of hell. And I know that all of us go through these weeks of hell frequently, to say the least. Anyway, I want to tell you the reasons for the hell because why should you have to listen to that junk? Last week we talked about Jack's wonderful book, the title being
Acoustic Shadows.
Acoustic Shadows, about 9-10 essays.
Mm-hmm.
The least one that I like is none. I think they're all first class, and you've got to get this book on Amazon.com. And I'm wanting very much to have you get my painting and drawing book on Amazon.com. It's only $20 or so. And if you don't have the money, somehow I'll get the money for you. Please tell us what you think about these YouTube casts. They seem to me to have a conversational variety that is, I don't want to say unique or give any compliments to myself because I don't think I deserve or not deserve them, but they don't matter so much. What matters is if you, the people listening, are having a good time. If we're too verbose, tell me. I mean, I can't change, but I'd love to know what you feel. We've talked today before our camera opening about, again, a topic that obsesses us. We were going through Alan Walker's biography of Liszt and talking about Liszt himself, Alan Walker, the British author of the 3-volume book on Liszt, the biography, a wonderful one. I was just reading, and Jack too, the 3rd volume, which had come out 10, 15, 20 years ago, but it's so filled with material that you just have no choice but to constantly to reread it if you love Liszt. And do we love Liszt?
We do, and there's so many things that Liszt sparks in conversation. And before we maybe go too far with that, and yet Liszt is the one who introduces to the piano world the notion of memory being an obligation. You and I gave a lot of time to talking about memory last week, and yes. I put to you a hurdle that I had hit where I had a piece that I brought very far along, but at this time in life I'm experiencing the first time where it's not as easy to get it into my memory. And I asked if you felt the investment mandated sticking with it until it was memorized, and you had argued in the affirmative that yes, one should. Now, speaking of our books, a book that I've been privileged to carry with me my whole life is Reflections from the Keyboard, that I've had this particular copy for decades. And when I left our conversation last week, I remembered a passage that plays devil's advocate against the notion of what the result of the investment should be. And this is from your interview with Peter Serkin. Do you remember his reply to this very question?
No, I haven't read it lately. Go on.
You reply after he talks about addressing music that he practices and yet doesn't bring to the platform. You ask, don't you have thoughts like, oh, I should have played this in public because I've spent all these hours on it and I must not waste the effort? And then he replies, no, because I don't consider the time I spend with music an investment. I really do appreciate the entire process. When I practice, it's because I want to. I think one's attitude has a lot to do with how much one gets out of practice, even if it's just scales for an hour and a half. So it came down to the word investment again, that here decades earlier you had brought up.
I'd already thought of the idea
yes.
that you have put in too much time, you must perform it somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And he comes back with the most magnificent answer, don't you think so?
I thought so, mainly because I've thought of it for years in the back and forth. I have the same notion that, well, I've started, I should see it through to the end. At the same time, I wonder if I've seen it to the end sometimes without the nominal mandate of memorization. And he seems to support that, even though memory isn't really the issue here. It's whether or not one completely brings it to the public platform,
Yeah.
which in a way I guess is
Yeah.
somewhat akin to having to play it from memory, because we imagine that to be the obligation of playing in public. But still, I found his response interesting.
Well, Peter Serkin, who died about 2 or 3 years ago, I heard his one of his last recitals with the Mozart K570, B flat sonata, and then the big work, the Goldberg Variation, something that he had loved his whole life, and played from the age of 16 when he first played it in public. Imagine. Well, I didn't know Peter Serkin well, but he did write a little grudgingly about Horowitz in my Horowitz book, because he was not a Horowitzian at all. He was a tremendous mind. His father, of course, being Rudolph, was always either a problem or something that would be helpful to him. And he got a lot out of him because he was a deep musician. But the idea here that he regards it as an investment is so fabulous. I take it truly above my assessment of just saying, no, you've given so much time, you must bring it to the stage and into the public. Mine is extremely valid. It certainly is for me, because I'm never ready to go. And that's a part of the stage. You've got to be ready to go. This, and it's a wonderful phrase, this is the package for the day.
Meaning that when you say ready to go, meaning the piece is not really complete until at the drop of a hat one is ready to go.
Yeah. As a row would be gotten up at 2 in the morning by one of Martin Krause, his teachers.
Well, that's in this book as well.
Yeah, and his daughters would, get him up. Oh, he was much younger than Peter Serkin, but he was trying to tell them, I'm breeding performers. That may never have occurred to Rudolf Serkin, who was breeding musicians in his mind.
Well, so that's a great distinction, because I wanted to ask you further, because there's a great elevated ambivalence even from you in your writings, because in the end of the essay, Tickling the Ivories, do I have the title exactly correct? And it appeared in the New Criterion?
Yes.
In the conclusion, you have a wonderful examination of how oftentimes it's the amateur who knows best how to use a piano.
Yes.
Whereas the professional is consigned to memorizing and honing and sanding a work to the point that it probably limits the breadth of the exposure. That sometimes when I feel that I'm obliged to the Puritan notion to see it to the end until it's memorized, once I reach that finish line, then I feel free to put it aside and then commit to yet another piece that's going to take a long time till I fulfill that puritanical obligation. And yet then I think there are people who cover more ground, and sometimes I'll feel ashamed, who will know pieces that I know I should at least address with a reading, who haven't taken the piano as far as I have, but they've read through it. And I feel ashamed in their presence, because they've achieved a breadth, the kind of thing that I think you mean in your essay, where you say sometimes an amateur knows how best to use a piano, which I guess what I mean is it's a skeleton key to the best exposure to the breadth of the literature.
And the amateur is not plagued with the guilt, that
Yes.
huge guilt that is certainly a human guilt, but one that is tinged by the operative of the piano itself, that it demands so much work. So for me, it's simple. I understand the other point of view. I understand the investment. I understand the amateurism. So I've been grappling with this sometimes unconsciously. How do I end my journey with learning? It doesn't matter if it's the piano, it's learning anything. Memorizing a book, as we were talking last time, and poetry, building something, whatever it is, especially in the world of art. Start a painting, you can't end, you have to end it. You can't just let it there. It's plaguing me right now. On my desk is a canvas with just little round spots that are with oil pastel, and then I with pencil write little lines. But the week was so bad that I couldn't finish it. I don't like to not finish a painting because you can't feel good if you don't finish it. But you have no choice with the piano. It's just going to go on and on. 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, God.
So, do you feel you give yourself a distinction as a painter, someone working in the plastic arts, versus your work on the piano, knowing that the piano is always going to reset itself, almost in a sinister-like way as we sleep?
It is a sardonic instrument, yeah.
But where the painting, if you see it through, you do know that you can put it aside, that it will hold on to the finished result. Whereas the pianist can't hold on unless they're repainting the canvas every day.
Yes. And that's why also you have to finish the G major toccata.
All right.
Yeah, because it's holding you back.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Right now you have not been playing as many pieces as you have been, and you were even talking about the idea that you're shamed that you're not reading through certain works, because that's an almost insatiable desire for people that are not too guilty. Oh my goodness, let me read through the 101 of Beethoven or the Appassionata. I never studied it. And they go slowly, and they have once again another viewpoint of the piece. But without that viewpoint, one starts feeling I'm not musicianly enough. And when it comes to Liszt, of course, is the bicep builder. And you have to, as Alan Walker rightfully says, you have to practice him all the time. He has to be in your muscles all the time. Now, what kind of attitude is this? This is a fierce attitude. Does he who plays the piano a bit like Alan, no doubt well in some ways, does he go to the piano and play Liszt every day? I have no idea.
And yet this kind of segues into the theme that we were talking about before we began to record today's discussion, about the idea of those who are free from deferring artistic work, whereas we encounter constantly countless people who seem to have a degree of gift, but every time we meet them, a year, maybe 5 years later, that book that they're talking about still doesn't have a page one. So how is it that someone like a Liszt, though we're talking about memory and the idea of finishing, also is given the gift of not deferring to confront perhaps the mess or the disorganized, compromised view of what's in his mind? Why do some of the most gifted not hesitate to begin work?
Why do they hesitate to begin work?
No, why do they do not? I don't imagine that someone like a Liszt hesitated when an idea came to his mind, and he wasn't afraid to see the compromised version, because we see over the years constantly revised versions of the works.
But you're speaking about people that don't do the work.
What I'm wondering is, why do some people have the impulse to confront their inspiration immediately, and other people live a life of constant deferral?
Well, you just set the human race in two different areas, and that's where they are. What do you think we're all about? We're about the great ones who have finished things, that have accomplished legacies. We are those people's teachers, students. And we look up to them and we say, why can't we do that? And we cannot do that, either because we don't have the big gift, or we don't have the discipline, or we have a psychological barrier that says if I do it, it's not going to be good. A Liszt, a Beethoven, these people cannot possibly let that get in the way. Hugo Wolf once had 2 or 3 major blocks during his career, and he almost killed himself during those blocks, because life's not worth the working at all if you're not productive artistically. For me not to be artistically productive, good, bad, or whatever I produce, that's not for me to say, as everyone says anyway. It's not for you to say. But what do I do? What do I do in life? Get up and have orange juice and exercise? God help me.
Now, may I ask, the puritanical idea of seeing a piece through to the end as a recreative performer, does that, because you are such a gifted generalist, does that sometimes strike you as something that you have to suppress as a, dare I say it, as a waste of time? Because if you were to follow just your pianistic impulse, you wouldn't be able to realize all of your drawing and painting.
Yes, that's right. There would be no time to write, to do radio shows, to talk to you, to read voluminously. These are all, it's just as important to me, or nearly as important. So I must defer to the piano in, let's say, instead of 4 hours a day, 1 hour or something. But I cannot ever know what I will be doing. It would be a boring psychological process to know what I'm doing next.
Do you mean
that's why I don't even like to know that painting on my desk is so close to the end, and I have no problem with what it is. It's a very didactic kind of thing. It's just, it's going to be circles all the way in, only this big, and it's quite near done. And because I had that bad week I talked about, I said I couldn't get to the end. Now that's gnawing at me. That today must go to the end. Now, why does it have to go to the end? Because I'm going to have to practice the Liszt Sonata, let's say, and I'm going to know that I'm just not going to get to the end again.
Of the Liszt practicing.
It's just an endless process at the piano, and it will crumble away. And then you may well not be in the because the idea of the executed artist practicing is a very different thing than the executed artist playing in public. You can practice slipshod all you want. Nobody can have a teacher, a great teacher next to you all day long, pointing out the structure and the sound and the fingering and everything else. You have to do this on your own, and it is a didactic and difficult, pedantic thing to do at times. Now, you can't sit at the piano and just rhapsodize and improvise and have a great time. If you would like to improvise, which is a great thing, it's going back to the idea of investments. Well, I gave up at 14 or 12 improvising because I'm wasting my time, my teacher told me. And every teacher that has ever talked to a piano, no, get that piece ready for a recital. That's what you need. The teacher is out to breed machines. Get them ready to play it.
That's what's so
complicated. Not good. It's not good.
It's such a complicated aspect of what we're talking about. We both, and I will leave here feeling the respect for your admonition that I have to see the Bach through to the end. And yet at the same time, I'm hearing something that commands my absolute respect and that my instinct tells me at this time of life about the potential danger of simply trying to hone something physically that's already been achieved. If I'm not mistaken, did not Liszt approve of Rosenthal putting his piano studies aside at a certain point to study philosophy?
Yes, both Friedheim and Rosenthal were brilliant men, and they were interested in literature and philosophy, and they indeed went to the University of Vienna full time, I think, and they may have told Liszt that they gave up the piano because, remember, they were both composers too. That was an added burden to the thing. Look at the amazing amount of production of the 19th century. Well, I too would like to be a part of that, and they all were. Not one did not partake in composing. Percy Grainger, Rosenthal, his exquisite little piano pieces that were the rather 7-minute Carnival de Vienne, which Johann Strauss so loved, based on his. They all could do paraphrases from Tausig on that were brilliant pianistic pieces. Tausig's great adaptation of an original work. That's a lot of chutzpah too. One of the most famous pieces of the 19th century is the work that launched the ballroom, and that was the Invitation to the Dance by Weber. Well, it's a very raw, bald, not too interesting pianistically piece in the sense that it would be if he composed it 10 years later and had seen what Chopin had done. But the point is, it was musically magnetic, and so later on, Tausig must have had my thought and said, oh gee, what a piece this could have been, and he then extends it to about 9 minutes. There's a recording, and if you don't get it today, that means that you are never going to be a disciplined person. You've got to get it. So simple on YouTube. You have to hear the performance of Rosenthal doing, not Rosenthal, but yes, Rosenthal doing the Weber Invitation to the Dance in the Tausig transcription. Rosenthal is incredible in this. I'm sorry, Moiseyevich, please forgive me, ladies and gentlemen. Moiseyevich, another one of the great pianists, and educated as can be. Winston Churchill's favorite pianist. I hear that every time that Winston was depressed, he'd call up Benno Moiseyevich, and he would say, come play my favorite Chopin ballade, which was number 3. Well, that's a wonderful moment of history. Is it absolutely true? Well, I hope so, and if it's not, it's now true to me. How do you feel about this now after we've talked about it? The going forward in this little part. That means you've got to get up and do it. It's very difficult, just like it's hard to go get the invitation dance, because we're not lazy. Something makes us forget at that moment, and then it goes to another forgetful until the day is over, and then you do forget it. And then 3 weeks later, someone will say, oh, did you hear the Invitation to the Dance in the Moiseyevich recording? And you'll say, no. And you'll still not go, you see. And that's the same process about practicing. If you don't practice every day, if you don't write every day, if you're not a poet unconsciously every day, you're never going to be anything at all. No. Is it important to be anything at all?
Well, I think the problem that, if you ask what I feel about the conclusion, or at least the summary of what we've talked about so far, is the immense contradiction that if one has the piano as the starting point, that it's something that commands one's tremendous respect of the ethos that one is taught as a custodian of that literature and the standard by which it should be presented, and the ethic that it teaches you in terms of its preservation and the constant maintenance. At the same time, if one does that, something creeps in if one feels they also have to contribute to some kind of literature, however poor one's talents may be. I just feel that I have to also attend to the idea that if I'm going to use what little time I have on the planet, that I'm most facile with words. And yet the piano is what drove me to that through its discipline. So here's what I mean. Whilst respecting the piano as the starting point, as the whetstone for all of my mind's powers, whatever they may be, I have to constantly hold a respect for that, yet also defy it at the same time, lest it take over my time. I don't know if there's an answer to it. It's to constantly almost live the Lisztian paradox of the worldly man who aspires at the same time to take holy orders.
Such a paradox. So amazing that he has to tie up that early religiosity that was his father, because the father had, attempted taking orders too.
That I didn't know. You're talking about Adam Liszt?
Yeah, Adam Liszt's father, whose death at early age in Liszt's development, 15 or 16, literally, when they were in Bologna giving concerts. Mother was in Paris, and he was just a boy. Wherever he went, it was so wonderful to be Liszt. I mean, they had never heard such playing anywhere, small town. And the father was a tremendous manager. I mean, if the father had continued a normal lifespan, we would have a very different Liszt. We would have had another kind of man.
But if we go back also to the basic paradox of the piano as a performance art versus the creative artist, Liszt had to come to the conclusion that one had to walk away from the maintenance.
Yeah, he had done his maintenance work very early. His first set of transcendentals etudes were certainly written for him. And then the second set were the most outlandishly difficult. That he said, of course I can play them, but it's their manageability is not good. I'm going to now not calm them down, but even streamline them more for the human hand. He had a knowledge of the human hand, which not Chopin, not Beethoven, not Schubert, of course, did not have. He had a knowledge of the human hand that made the human hand pianistically universal. There is no Liszt piece that you need to have a small or big hand, of course, in this measure of that. But basically speaking, it's so amazingly streamlined for the human hand, whatever size. Now Rachmaninoff writes for the human hand, and my God, you better have a pretty big one.
Yes.
Or if you're going to be like Hoffman and you get the dedication of the Rachmaninoff Third and you never play it, well, how come you never play it? You just can't make the hand make it happen.
Now, is it a fable that he had a piano commissioned where the width of the
No,
keys?
it's very real. Steinway did that for him, and he had participated. Steinway didn't know what to do. He knew what to do. He was a very, very lively inventor. And there are still, I hear, something like 35, what are they called?
Patents, I suppose.
Patents.
Yes.
Patents. He had homes with the, going toward the lights, and he remember the metronome was no doubt, I don't think that there's really a doubt, that he saw it rain one day. He was practicing with his metronome because it's really a great idea.
The metronome?
Yeah, and I mean, he had great tricks. If you really study Joseph Hoffman's playing, one section will be one metronome marking absolutely, and then the next will be absolutely the same, but a little faster or slower. He's very canny, and he knows the piano so well. He has prize fighter, a little man's body, prize fighter fists.
So you think it was the size of his hand that really prevented him from taking up the Rachmaninoff Third Concerto?
Yeah, and because he was lazy.
Okay.
His laziness enters into all of our life every day, and he didn't want to decipher all of those chords, not just because he didn't want to, but he was not good at it. He was not a good sight reader. He needed to hear it. The ear was of such spiritual dimension and refinement that the perfect pitch was probably one of the greatest that any pianist ever had. He would hear the 24 preludes and he would go play them.
Yes.
Now, if he had problems with them, which any pianist would, there's no such thing you're going to play he couldn't practice them easily because he couldn't and didn't want to, through the laziness, read the notes.
What do you think it is with someone as gifted as a Hoffman? What is the incentive of laziness?
The boredom of the maintenance that he had from childhood on.
I remember in one of your books even your phrase that he felt chained to the piano.
Yeah, so I don't know how you remember all of these phrases, but yes, that's right. And you have felt chained to the piano at times.
Well, that's what I mean by
So have I, my
the
God.
contradiction. It's a slave master that teaches tremendous things, and to run away from that master would be at great cost to the slave.
Oh my God.
And yet,
Yeah.
one has to try to escape. I don't know. I cannot reconcile the two things.
I'm only hoping that every parent in the world that could possibly be listening to this broadcast understand at what peril they are giving their children piano lessons. Only eventually possibly to be lazy wannabes and always think when they're at a concert that they can do that too. but they can't.
Mm.
You have to have desire, you have to have talent, you have to have a sense of structure, and still none of these mean anything except you've got to sit on your ass, as Rachmaninoff said. That's where 90% of the talent comes from, sitting down all day and doing
Yes.
it. And he had it, you see. How did he have it? He had it as a conductor, which no doubt he had such perfect pitch. They said that there was no possibility of any musical attribute that he did not have in full.
Now, he seemed to escape the incentive that nature gives over time to laziness.
Except the great guilts he had during the 1920s when he came here and he had to make a living, and he had Rachmaninoff always things planned in his mind first. He said, well, I can't really compose because I need total, silence and everything else. And here I am, I'm taking my time trying to pass my driver's license. It took him 6 times, failing each time.
Mm-hmm.
I have to get a house here. I have children, 2 of them. I have a wife I love. I'm going to conduct. No, I don't want to conduct. I only like to conduct when I want to conduct. No, I will refuse the Boston Symphony and the Cincinnati Orchestra. I don't want to conduct. Oh, what do I want to be? Well, what does he want to be? What every pianist from the beginning wants to be all their lives. The best pianist in the world. Mm-hmm. A great one. Mm-hmm. So he went back and he started. He's now in America, and he punishes himself 2 ways. No more composing. There's no works practically except 3 little, orchestral transcriptions. For 10 years, a prolific man stops composing.
All right, do you think
that's
that
terrible.
he made the right decision?
Only on a practical term, of course. Why would he make the right decision if all that music went into the air? In his case, he may have been the greatest living pianist, mm-hmm. along with Hoffman and Horowitz and a few Germans. But no, he was throwing away his time to the piano because he had a gift equal to the piano in composition. Why would you waste your time learning the Liszt Sonata, which Tchaikovsky told me was the greatest he had ever heard?
Mm. You mean, notwithstanding Tchaikovsky's opinion of Rachmaninoff's sonata, he would contend that it would still have been better, though there was given by Rachmaninoff the greatest Liszt sonata rendering, it would still be better to have more piano concertos from Rachmaninoff.
Of course.
Yes, so...
Of course. So you and I could look at them and hear
yes.
them. Instead of 24 preludes, we could have, 65.
So then, why was someone like a Rachmaninoff, I know there are a million practical considerations to make these differences, but someone like a Liszt instinctively knew to step away from that solution of making a living, whereas Rachmaninoff did not. Did he have less respect, do you think, for deeply in terms of his output as a composer than a Liszt?
I can't answer that one because Liszt was so prolific, 1,400 mm-hmm. works. Rachmaninoff not prolific, 43 opus numbers.
Yeah.
Rachmaninoff took his time with composing, and he needed time. He comes to New York. He's really the head of the Russian immigrant society here, the real head, like, everyone would, like the Godfather would be. If you don't, when Horowitz comes to New York the second day, he has to go see Rachmaninoff. Rachmaninoff's wasting his time practicing. It happens to be he loves to practice. He is one of those few. Mm-hmm. Because perfection for him is not around the corner. He's going to hit it. And if we listen to every one of his recordings, and every piano teacher in the world better during every lesson they give to every one of their students, make sure that they hear at least the Greek dance or Nolan Reagan of Liszt or something. Because here is the acme of chaste classical romantic piano playing. And no one has ever accomplished more refinement of technique except in, 4 or 5 pieces played by Joseph Levine. So yes, I'm telling you that I am the supreme critic of the piano, without a doubt. Big deal. I'm not the supreme critic of vocal or violin playing. I know nothing about the flute, see? But since I love the piano so much, I gave my time, which nobody cares about if I gave it or not. And nobody cared if Rachmaninoff was eating borscht and instead of composing on West End Avenue where he lived at 505. You can see the plaque. I always touch it as I pass it when I'm walking down there, and I do frequently. And this man was wasting his time on 50. Only on the plaque of any interest is in this residence, Rhapsody on a theme of Paganini was composed.
Wow.
The rest is a waste of time in the air. What do I need, really, except for my own selfishness, a performance of Rachmaninoff doing the third sonata of Chopin.
So here's where the paradox then increases. If the greatest pianists turn out to be composers, and if they are the greatest composers that turn out to be the greatest pianists, there's going to be that conflict that cannot be solved. If we need to have works that are new, that are composed for the instrument, and they need the greatest of pianists to render them, and if it so happens to be that the people who have the gifts to produce them are also people who can render them, eventually someone's going to pay an enormous price. Do you think Rachmaninoff felt that there's an alternating generation, in a sense that someone like a Liszt gave us such a volume of material that it's going to take then a great composer who is also going to have to sacrifice himself to be the voice of that person?
Yeah.
It's a conundrum that I can't get past. I think about it a lot, and obviously I don't have a millionth of a fraction of the conflict that a Rachmaninoff faced, but it's something that one starts to think about.
Oh, he must have faced a terrible conflict. He comes to America. He has many images of America. He'd been here 10 years before premiering his third concerto. It was not a success, but the second concerto from 1901 or 2 had already been a big deal here. He's interviewed by everyone. He goes back to Russia. He's always practical minded. He wants a place not to practice, he wants a place to compose, and he wants to own it. He doesn't want to be the guest, so to speak, of his father-in-law who owns Ivanovka, the estate that he lives on, and would live on then from 1912, 13 to be his own, and then was thrown off by the Russian Revolution because he was scared, really scared they were going to tear everything apart and kill him and his family. So he had a lucky moment, and they gave him some concerts, some impresario in Sweden or Denmark, 10 concerts in Scandinavia. He did it. He took only his 500 rubles, told them he would be back. They didn't see why he wouldn't be back. He was a great landowner, an estate man. He had been born into the aristocracy. His grandfather was even a pupil of John Field. He was very, very proud of that. And so he had tremendous competitive instincts as well. His cousin, first cousin, is one of the great pianists of the day, Zolati, who takes him under his wing at the Moscow Conservatory. He studies with Zverev, the finest teacher of young talent, and they all had to stay in that teacher's home all the time and be directed to what he wanted. So he gained an extraordinary kind of discipline. Today, Zverev would say, today we go, my friends, to the gypsies and we watch them. Tomorrow we go to the best Moscow restaurant and we hear the clanging of glasses. You'll have the best wine in town and you'll learn to understand that. So he has an aristocratic view, especially in a time of revolution, where the whole place is going under. Now he has enough wherewithal to again give it all up, give his manuscripts up, give his pianos up, give his whole estate with babbling brooks and everything else. I mean, a man had such discipline, and he goes with the wife. She has nothing much to say in his life or the child, but he's just very filled always with responsibility, and the piano always is the instrument of great hourly responsibility. He comes to New York, and what am I going to do? He gets a concert video. They're in a precarious state, and soon though they discover that he's, wow, he is incredible, and so now he has more than his own music, but a repertoire to be able to play a major concert career, and he does. And he's very, very money prone. He doesn't give a concert in one city without coming back there with always the knowledge he had a big return more on his money. He would get a bigger fee. So he was conscious now he's in the dollar land and he's going to make the best of it. None of these people were happy really to be in dollar land except for the dollar. They were only here for the dollar.
Oh.
This is the moment
Yes.
in American culture that culture emerges in every art museums, concert halls, all within 5-6 years. Huge amounts of libraries from the philanthropy of Rockefeller, all blossoming. Sovereign's Hall in Cleveland, the Boston Symphony, the Chicago, the St. Louis, all of them manned with the finest European musicians all coming here, as they had since 1848, the Revolution. They got to get to America where you will be secure. We do not understand how insecure Europe was outside of England during the first half of the 19th century.
So they were offered the security of the dollar, but they were also given an audience, even though people are very fond of mocking that audience.
That emerging audience that is seeing, oh yeah, this stuff is really important. They had already had Anton Rubinstein here, the idol of Rachmaninoff, and Scriabin. Scriabin had been here. They were all coming, and they were most likely going to stay. Well, their composition in a world of commerce would fall off. Nobody wants Rachmaninoff's next symphony. They want to come and titillate themselves with his amazing gifts as a pianist. But that doesn't mean he's not wasting his time, and he knows it.
Okay.
He knows it badly.
Now, do you feel, in your vast knowledge of the arts as a generalist in this comprehensive way, does that paradox surface in the other arts to the same degree? And what would you cite as an example?
I could cite almost every painter that became successful through money.
Okay.
Picasso's a great example. He became a multi-millionaire, a great artist, a major painter of the 20th century in certain ways. Stupendous mind, phenomenal technique. But as he himself knew, he painted many forgeries because he liked to get the money.
So, in a way, one becomes doomed to the repetition that a piano enforces on the musician if one is in the plastic arts by having to reproduce successes.
Yeah, the moment you have a specific success, like in music, the Rachmaninoff C-sharp minor, he stayed away from that. He tried hard not to play that because he didn't want to reproduce it in his own music again. You never must do that. You always got to go to another work. So Picasso, if he had the Damoiselle in 1909, if he did, it's a major turning point in 20th century work. And then comes his Cubism. Well, if he goes too far with the Cubism, too many of them, and he does. He always does. He, whatever his distortion, he'll copy that distortion for 30 or 40 years, even if it's hard to see. So money will destroy the artist inevitably. All grants will destroy you. Every Guggenheim, every possible thing that they want to do for you, which now it doesn't happen at all because no one wants it. No one wants to do anything for the artist.
Well, who do you think resisted the best?
Duchamp was a great resistor.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic man. The post-impressionists had no problem with it because there was no money in Paris for painting works that were original. So everything was the Messonnier and the Moreau and all of that stuff from the time. Now we don't even look at their paintings. They're much better than we know, but they don't cost one little Van Gogh or I mean, really, do we really need to pay $80 million for a piece of canvas of Edvard Munch's The Scream? This is ridiculous. Who wants to give 80 million? I would like to give you some money. I'd like to give someone else money. I would like to make sure that you're able to produce.
Well, how did it get to that point?
Because money just absolutely destroys everything. Well, look at where we are. Tariffs. Come on. I mean, get me out of this crazy world. It's ridiculous.
Now, in music, who do you think resisted best? Who?
No one cared about music after 1940 ever again, except on the appreciation level, which made Toscanini so important. Why would the world's leading musician be a mere conductor who also always conducted everything with high intensity?
Mm-hmm.
He was your great publicist for the music, as Virgil Thompson's phrase, music appreciation racket. Then comes the liner notes and the this and the that, and music stopped the moment its vocabulary was curtailed forever. When was it curtailed forever? As early as Tristan in 1850s. By the Transfigured Night of Schoenberg. Well, what did we have to have a work like that 40 years after Tristan? Very, very heated, very delicious, very, sexy. Finally, there's nothing to do. You're a leader, 100 minutes. What? Now he's taking, Mahler's side. Where was Mahler going to go with 90-minute symphonies? He could have cut each one of them 30 minutes. They really should have.
Where do we go?
Musically nowhere. The vocabulary, unfortunately, is exhausted. The best you could do is you're born with a little compositional talent. They're everywhere, and they start putting down their little marches or tangos at age 9 or 6, and then they go on and they study marvelous technique. I mean, anyone can teach anything now because you have literally 600 straight years how this worked with Palestrina, how this color worked with Mahler. All you have to do is read it. You want to become an orchestrator? Study the Fourth Symphony of Mendelssohn. It'll tell you all you ever need to know in clear orchestration.
You mentioned the parent who takes their child to a recital and all of a sudden has the fantasy or perhaps the reasonable dream that the child could take part in that world. What might be a better, if you feel the language is exhausted, and then if that child puts their energy into that world and is only doomed to be a recreator, but has some other gift of energy, should we be pushing children in another direction rather than thinking the piano is still a universal skeleton key to unlocking humanity? If it's at a dead end, and in one of these interviews, in fact, I wish I remembered which one, but one of your interviewees talked about how the Jewish factor in performing and in music was so powerful after the kind of ghettoized man was free from just putting his energy into the Torah. And then suddenly all of that compounded energy could be spread. Are we compounding into a few things now in a desperate reflection on something that can't move forward, a kind of almost rigid Torah study when we study the piano, where it could be unghettoized for all of the children, so to speak? Again, a very figurative way to look at this, and spread into another direction. What would that be?
No direction that I can see. The direction now can only be to be peaceful citizens of a world which artistically has said its greatest things. It's 1,000 years old. You can become a wonderful scholar. The chances are that you are going to be a Schoenberg or a Wagner. The chances are absolutely nil that the environment will be something like Gauguin trying to show the world that there is more enchantment than just Paris or France, that he goes to see Tahiti. All of the exotic writing is over with. There's nothing exotic. You may have some specific science fiction novel that be good, but it's going to be ephemeral. All of those are. And what is Brave New World so good? It's horrible writing. And Brave New World just tells us that 1984 is coming. It's come. It's not gone. It won't be gone. There's only now the great fight to be an individual within a mass man. Man is just a piece of a whole unit that will become, in its last step of evolution, the artificial intelligence in one way or another. Yes, I know that you have many reasons for optimism that it's not going to take us over, but you see, it's very existence is disturbing.
Sure.
Just there. Artificial intelligence, what kind of word is that? Horrifying. We haven't even used our brain in any way yet. The first way now that we have to use our brain is the knowledge that we threw the horrible machine called the atomic bomb down twice and ended the war. And then we decided to destroy 100,000 people, firebombing Tokyo and Dresden and this and that. I mean, what is a higher goal than to stop war, if you have any interest in humanity at all? And then you have to stop the overpopulation. Don't let anyone tell you there is none. It's getting worse by the hour. People are starving more and more.
But how?
These are admirable. We don't need art.
Okay. Well, okay. Well, see, now there's
just for you and me. Just for my little gift needs to come out. No one cares about it. No one has called me and said, your paintings are new and fresh and I want to have one. What's the price? No one is making you a bestseller. In a time before this, maybe you would have been quite different. Maybe you were.
Well, I think what we're talking about now, however, is how does one enact the idea of resisting the collective? I think that's what you were saying, that the most important thing is to still be an individual. And it seems that the people that we admire are always calling for that in the different successive centuries. But now I'm going to take the risk that it seems that we're given the greatest opportunity to have to try to perform that challenge now. So do you feel that you do that? You seem to have chosen drawing and painting as your principal assertion as an individual. And would you think that would be the best choice for someone who wants to undertake the expression of their individuality? How does one best resist? We've talked about this before. I don't know that if I were to go stand in a mob and shout and hold up a placard saying, let's disarm ourselves, that I would really be using my time wisely. I often feel that those mobs So I understand what you're arguing for. I think the means by which they're trying to achieve it is misguided. It would seem to me that if each person were to assert their individuality in a genuine way and undertake some kind of art, and hence our argument, no art, no life, that the rise of these individuals would be much more powerful in these movements than mass demonstrations, which seem to me merely to be a cop-out for people who don't know how to employ their time. That's really my genuine feeling.
It is a cop-out.
Yeah.
What do people do all day long? Are they reading Proust? Are they taking walks? Are they sketching? Are they, you can take up art. You don't have to be a master. You don't have to sell it. You don't have to be a great genius. But you do have to do one thing: fill your time till you die. And the best way to do it is certainly as an individual. And if you're seen in a mob, you're already lost. You're lost.
So that then brings us where we began today, and I think was probably maybe the theme that we decided we would save for this conversation. Why then do we meet so many people who know that to be true, and we can even connect them with a particular tendency that might be their outlet of individuality, whereas painting or writing, or we can guess any number of things, but they constantly defer it. Why do you think that is?
Constantly lethargic, you say?
Or always putting it off. I'm sure you know any number of people, and I know any number of people to whom I've been introduced because I have a certain body of work of writing, that someone will then introduce me to this person to offer them some advice, and then 10 years later I'll still meet that same person, and they're still on chapter 1 of their imagined book. Why are there so many of those people?
It's a romantic concept. The artistry, it's still with us. The idea of, we're still talking about Liszt, even though nobody hears any significant part of his music. We have a few concert halls. We have no ballet really to think of. We have no opera to think of. One opera house too. Come on, in the whole United States.
But on the individual level, why do you think people defer like that?
And not do it.
Yeah. You seem to, every time I come here each week, I notice new drawings.
Of course.
Alterations to old ones. You do not have that impulse to yield to, how did we call it? Were we calling it laziness before? Or how nature gives some kind of incentive for people to defer or to be lazy? Yeah. I've heard the generalization that even nature is lazy, that most animals will do as little as they possibly can. And I understand that if you don't know where, as a bear, your next moose that you're going to kill is coming from. But human beings have a touch of the angel in them. Why wait to put on your wings?
Human beings have a touch of the angel in them. Are you sure?
Well, you're right, that's debatable. In fact, that book that I'm reading right now, The Great Chain of Being, argues very much how, though there may be angels, that's not our role.
No, it's not our role, and it's not the role of 80% of Americans to think that they're being watched over by angels. Isn't that possibly the reason that they're as lazy as they are? Are they so egocentric that they think they're going to live on and on and on and finally do their great novel? Well, number one, they're never going to do their great novel. Number two, they have no possibility in them of doing a great novel. They have no training.
Okay.
You cannot possibly be a musician and decide at age 50, I'm going to do a symphony. It takes orchestration, counterpoint, every possible imagination. I mean, it's impossible to become a musician of high rank and compose a 30-minute piece. Come on. They deep down know, and we all do, everything. It's all in the unconscious. It comes out of the dreams. The dreams, I wouldn't want to know what their dreams are, frankly, because they're certainly not creative, I'm afraid. Am I talking on an elitist? Of course not. Talking about an individual. Each individual is either worse than the last one, or maybe he's a little better in mathematics. It may well be that mathematics, going past Mondrian, the great Dutch geometrical type painter, very beautiful work. I love it, but it's not, not enough for me. But maybe a form of mathematics in the future, something that I don't even know how to add or subtract right now. I mean, 8 and 9 is what, 17? Like, is that true or not? I don't know. I don't need it anymore, right? Nobody even needs that. But of a high type of mathematics, that may be a huge amount of future. What is science? I don't like science killing me.
So do you think
It's killed me? It's killed Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I don't want anything to be used again. They're gonna invent it because it's too much fun for them. But I don't want to see it. I don't want to see, unless it's going to give me a sense of well-being or some aesthetic ecstasy. How can I talk to people about what a painting by Rembrandt means? Does it mean anything? It means there's his features. It shows so deeply the almost the pain of being human. But way above that is that it is a work of aesthetic ecstasy. Clyde Bell calls aesthetic ecstasy your highest form of emotion, far above religion. So that's why this is no art, right?
Yes, no art, no life. How does he make the distinction between those two experiences, the religious and the aesthetic ecstasy?
Well, he as a great critic, he knows that, like, your last great painter was Cezanne, and the Ravenna frescoes, or what do you call them, those were very beautiful. But he's able to, as a fine critic, tell you that that this is an inferior work, or this is most works of what we call art are inferior works. They're not capable of that height of a Bach Mass in B minor, Beethoven Missa Solemnis, or sonatas, or
It's funny, you name multiple pieces that ostensibly their aim is religious.
yes, but they're never by religious people.
Right. How do you account for that?
Bach's religion was not the religion you think it is. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to hear about that.
No, he's a workman. If he's in Weimar, he'll do organ pieces. If he's at the St. Thomas, he'll do. The genius is universal. He doesn't care what he's composing. It never stops. Now, how many people have anything in them that never stops except the desire for money and food and love? Are you joking? Do they really love?
Now,
I don't know.
to go back to the distinction between the aesthetic ecstasy and the religious experience, and arguing that the aesthetic ecstasy is a higher state, is that because we're not aspiring to something through which we gain something, whereas even in the religious practice, we're still trying to lobby for something, which is usually that we're going to go on after we perish. So is the argument that the religious aesthetic the highest state because it's a state where we want the least? Is that what the argument is?
That's very good. That it's the state that we want the least. You don't even know it's happening to you if you have the ability to have the aesthetic ecstasy. You walk into a museum and you look at the majesty of an El Greco who's saturated in Catholic Spain. It looks down at it all, only looks up at painting. Only painting is important. And you look at it and you see, well, this is above any religious creed or dogma. This is the greatest single piece of formal work my eyes have ever seen, and I am trembling. I'm trembling from it.
Now, trembling in a reaction of what consequence? What is the force? It implies, I feel like there's a presence or something that's making you have a reaction that, usually a reaction is to protect oneself or to, how would you describe the trembling?
Well, it's the same trembling that we talked on an earlier program on a lesser level, which was George Gershwin hearing a trivial piano piece which has a meretricious melody.
Oh yeah, the melody in F.
Yeah, melody in F, and he becomes a composer because of that.
Mm.
Well, he had aesthetic ecstasy from four measures in a saloon in a
Yes.
palace in Harlem.
Yeah.
You walk into this, and I see it right now. I'm walking into the Prado, and I mean I'm seeing El Greco. Well, he's so far above any religion that nobody could even imagine, because my body is reacting to not subject matter only,
Mm.
but to the formal beauty, such as only a Beethoven and a Bach and a few others have.
And you don't feel then that that's crossing over into a non-sectarian religious experience?
It can, but it's transcendental over it. In
All
the
right.
religious experience, it may even be a picture of a crucifixion. Doesn't matter to me what
So,
it is.
in other words, you can have something that becomes non-sectarian, though it has a very clear origin within one framework of religious
Yeah,
quality.
yeah, yeah.
What are some examples of that?
Oh, thousands. Look at the central painting of Christianity, the Last Supper. Did you ever see it in person?
I have not.
Oh my God. Forget the restorations and the chips. Oh my God, this is, you could say, this is God.
Mm.
Leonardo is the Lord of men. He's
Mhm.
one of the greatest. His life itself was what we speak of always as art. He was, in life, art. They were not separated. He is not interested in finishing things either.
Mhm.
Doesn't have your guilts or mine.
Mhm.
He doesn't. He's a great musician too. Everyone said. You know, he sang. He played the lyre, but not no. Mr. Leonardo is forgetting his idiotic inventions. The airplane. We never should have invented that horrible instrument of terror. He was the Lord of men. He created the most perfect. I don't like Mona Lisa's face. She's not my type. That's the greatest portrait ever made, except the other one of his.
You say it
the
is
other
the
two.
greatest portrait?
Yeah. Oh, sure. And here's where the people took the art critics and agreed with him, and they come and they stand in line and watch it, and they leave obediently, and they tell their aunt Hilda in Ohio that they have just seen the Mona Lisa, and oh, it's beautiful.
When you said that what's depicted is not your type, you mean from a personal point of view?
The idea of personal has nothing to do with aesthetic ecstasy.
Right, but you acknowledge that it's the greatest portrait. How do you reconcile the reaction that you have to the image that you say is not your type, but you can also acknowledge
It's a good question, but there's no answer to that.
Mm.
I look at it. She's someone I want to go and touch and feel and look at. But you know, I don't have to go further.
Mhm.
I don't have to humanize it into the repulsiveness, as Leonardo felt that the sexual act was. Very repulsive act. Of course it is. Does it mean that, you know, the instinct is not, you know, quite overwhelming, and everyone seems to love to do it if they can? This man, Leonardo, is so fantastic that I can't talk about him. One leaf on, you know, one of his demonstrations of botany. No human being could ever do that in any medium.
So then, perhaps,
And it's not craftsmanship, this is an ecstasy of that
Yes.
leaf.
so perhaps can we simply be in a period where we are waiting for those who can bring us that ecstasy
Oh,
again?
that's romantic nonsense.
So,
who
meaning-
are we waiting for?
Well, meaning someone who could perhaps, after 1,000 years, be his successor.
No.
No?
What do we need his successor for? We need Brahms' Fifth Symphony? No, nothing like that.
But why?
There's no one waiting in the sperm bank to hit the proper egg.
But then, aren't we then consigned to always be looking over our shoulder? How do we go on if we feel that the cosmos is fixed?
It's a good question because I've never thought of it.
Because doesn't that also slip into what I always feel is some of the fragile aspects of religion that says that revelation This would make me sit back if I was at a mass a few times as a child. I would go and I would think, well, how could revelation be localized, either in time or place, from a universal creator? Wouldn't he impart his message so that it wouldn't be confined to one spot in the desert? So I'm just playing devil's advocate. As high as you hold Leonardo, can we only imagine, however fragile and flawed we are as a species and a race, can't there perhaps be another revelation outside of place and time of such a man?
Hope so.
All right.
I haven't given up.
Oh, good. That's what I wanted to establish. All right.
I mean, if it happened once,
Yes.
but it won't happen like him. It will be of a different. It'll be of a different caliber.
Well, that I
and
understand.
a different
Mhm.
way of. But it certainly will have that high spirituality,
Mhm.
and the work that he will produce. It doesn't matter if it's his handwriting that you're reading backward. It's exquisite. The word exquisite is exquisite, isn't it?
It is.
It's enough. Mozart is enough for me. Remember the movie?
I remember, yes.
Mozart's enough for me. Maybe Beethoven today is not, because Percy Granger said, Mozart is enough for me, but Beethoven, he's too militaristic today.
Do you think it's because people of the military maybe appropriated some of the martial overtones of music that didn't have that intention?
Yeah, no, but they were there already now through the Napoleonic Wars.
Mm.
This man was conscious of power, Beethoven, the will to power, like Napoleon.
Yes.
A lesser, a man that should have been an artist, a failed man because he ended up, destroying. Beethoven, though, has all of that French Revolution rumble in his music, rumbling through all the time. It just said, Fifth Symphony of Beethoven could crush civilization.
Do you think a Granger could be confounding the sound of militancy in association with actual cannonade with the militancy that someone like a Thoreau means when he says that he's going to step to the music of his own drummer?
No. Thoreau is talking about a wonderful spiritual thing.
And don't we think Beethoven...
No, Beethoven is a universal creature with aspiring to the will of power, and it's in every work. That's why I'm so relieved when I hear a bucolic Beethoven instead of the big stuff.
Well, that's what I mean. I think Beethoven certainly strives toward the will, toward power, but a power so great that it doesn't have to exercise itself over a weaker power. It doesn't sound militant then.
He's that way.
Okay.
He's a peaceful man.
Okay, that's how
I'm just saying that new element in the world itself has entered into his music. That's why
I see. Mm-hmm.
it could crush the world. Well, it did crush the 18th century Mannerist world.
Mm. By Mannerist,
I mean, everyone was, doing the right thing.
I see. Okay.
They were dressed elegantly. Mm-hmm. They were talking in a different way. Beethoven, he gets up in the morning, he forgets to shave one half.
Yes.
He's going to do impossible things. The Hammerklavier is an impossibility that he created.
Yes.
No one could do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's so vast. A little wooden instrument that he gets from, and he's
Yes.
creating the Hammerklavier. 15 minutes of hammering.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's so interesting, and I don't know about our audience. Maybe they've long left us, but they should come back because there's a lot of interesting things. For me,
I feel the
so
same.
maybe there's a few people out there for us.
I agree.
So that's why we're using this technology.
Yes,
What a
well,
word. Technic is the one word that describes craft, art, and procedure. And in Greek, there's no two words or threes. What technic? Tecnic.
All right, well
or
then,
TCH. I don't know which. I can't spell anything.
well then, No Art, No Life can also try to wrest that word back into its original etymology.
Yeah, but we could go into things that can drive us crazy, such as Plato's Republic and how he thinks of the artist. And we will do that.
We
next-
should do that. All
we
right.
should do that next week or some
Okay.
other time because we have endless
Yes.
amounts
Agreed, David.
to talk with
Yes.
all of us. Please let us know exactly how you feel. Subscribe. Yes, there's no doubt about it. If we feel rejected and there's only 20 people watching, well, there's no doubt that these 20 people are really quite something. But I want a billion.
Agreed, but I always remind David, in terms of the fear of rejection, that that's a moot point, because I always admire Virginia Woolf's remark after reading Emerson, that he reads like a man who cannot be rejected because he carries the universe within him. So, David, I always feel I'm carrying a conversation with the universe, so it's an honor. Thank you.
Good. So good to be with you, Jack. See you next week.
Thank you so much.
This is David Dubois. Thank you for listening.